and we can figure out how technology enables you to deliver a new kind of value, that's when we can really see the upside potential. The risk that so many established companies have is they say, you know what, we're good. We don't need to worry about it. And then a startup comes along, and this is where we get disruption.
Yeah. In an ever-changing world that's all about staying connected, building connections, and seeing where the next collaboration takes a marketing campaign. From an initial brief to the follow-through, what paths are going to make a campaign success more than a possibility? Hi, I'm Brett Marchand, CEO of Plus Company. This is Partners in Possibility. During this exciting and transformative period we're living in, what Avi Goldfarb calls the between times, we are witnessing huge advances in technology and machine learning. Avi is the Rotman Chair in AI and Healthcare at the University of Toronto. He's also Chief Data Scientist at the Creative Destruction Lab and co-author of the best-selling book, Prediction Machines, and its follow-up, Power and Prediction. Today, we continue our conversation about AI and prediction technology and how it will change our industry. We talk about the vital role that human judgment plays in using this technology most effectively, and how we here at Plus Company are unlocking what's possible in the consumer journey with our newest innovation, AIOS. Let's talk about digital marketing and advertising. What further disruption do you think is coming?
So more of a question of what part of the industry isn't going to be transformed. And this, it's such an information intensive industry.
Yeah.
I think there's two core areas though, thinking into the future. The first one is in content development. So right now, content is still not personalized. So broadly, you have humans developing content for that is going to be appealing to a wide variety of people. What AI can do is take that human developed content and then adapt it to the particular needs of users based on the various data coming in. And so we can use generative tools, so image generation and writing, to take an advertising campaign theme that would be human generated and adapt it to the particular needs of a user who might be seeing an ad at a particular time. So there's going to be a real transformation in content and content development.
Yeah.
I think. The other side of it is on optimization and allocation. So how do we develop effective campaigns that don't just get the right ad to the right person at the right time, but do it in a way that's optimal from a budget sense, so that the company isn't just maximizing revenue per se or maximizing clicks, but is actually getting a return for their ad dollars in a way that right now is very, very hard to deliver and measure.
You've picked on two areas, by the way, that we're putting a major focus on, both on the content development and customization side, but also on ROAS. And we've talked about in past podcasts, we've got this project called Project Catalyst. But you talk about prediction and separating prediction in the decision-making process. I think that's a really important concept that people will be interested in hearing your reflections on.
Remember, what today's AI does is it's computational statistics. It's prediction technology. And what are predictions for? Predictions in and of themselves have no use. What a prediction is for is it helps you make better decisions. And decision making is the big deal, especially in information intensive industries. That's what the benefit of prediction comes from, helping us make better decisions. The hope for humanity, right, is that prediction isn't everything involved in a decision. There's all these other parts of a decision that still require a human touch. One of them is understanding what data to put into the prediction and how that works. Another is an action, like actually doing something with your prediction. But the most important one is this thing we call judgment.
Right.
And judgment at a high level is knowing which predictions to make and what to do with those predictions once you have them. And that remains inherently human.
Yeah.
My best explanation of judgment is from this. You ever seen the movie I, Robot?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty good science fiction movie. It's a pretty good movie, and it's excellent science fiction. Okay, and what makes it excellent science fiction is this flashback scene. So Will Smith is the protagonist in iRobot, and he hates robots. So you can kind of see where the movie's going to go. And there's this scene about why he hates robots. So he and this little girl, they're driving in a car, and they get into a car accident, and they both start sinking into a river, and it's clear they're both about to drown. And then a robot comes along and saves him and not the girl. And that's why he hates robots, right? So it turns out because it was a robot, you could audit it. And so he audited it, and he figured out, well, why did it save him and not the girl? And it turned out the robot predicted that he had a 45% chance of survival, and the girl had an 11% chance of survival. And so Will Smith, the detective, says, well, but 11% was more than enough, and a human being would have known that. Well, I don't know if 11% was more than enough. That's an inherently human statement. That's judgment.
Yep.
So someone programmed that robot, that fictional robot, to say a life is a life. 45 is more than 11, so save him. When you have an AI, the AI is providing a number. It is providing a prediction. That is only useful if you then provide your judgment on what do you do with that prediction. That's disruptive to industry. It's not disruptive to industry because it's uncomfortable. We can figure that out. It's disruptive to industry because the people who are good at doing a prediction and judgment together, or the parts of your organization that are good at making decisions where you have that prediction and judgment bundled together, might not be the same as those that are good when the prediction is provided by a machine and there is a human providing judgment.
It's funny because we have an example of this. We did a campaign for Google Cloud in the US where during the Super Bowl, the AI engine at Google was taught by every single game that had ever been done in the NCAA before. And then they took what happened in the first half and at halftime made a prediction on what would happen in the second half. So, and it was incredibly accurate. They guessed pretty much the score, who would win, but also a whole bunch of other predictions, how many 3-pointers would be scored, et cetera. And one of the judgments that we had to make with Google is because we then on the fly put an ad on air and said, here's what's going to happen in the second half. And of course, predicting the score in the second half, that's where we had to use judgment to say, no, that's not the right thing to do, because you can imagine what it would have done to, sports betting and people's anxiety around who would win or not. There's all kinds of issues there. So it's a good example. I hadn't thought about it that way until you just put it that way, but that was one of the core things that we had to think about when we did that campaign with Google. As we explore the innately human role of judgment in making use of new prediction technology, we can also begin to imagine how it will affect the larger structures within different industries. And how do you think that will help the potential of AI, this decoupling you talk about?
A lot of the potential is going to be through a reinvention of the organization. Just like with electricity, the decoupling of the power source from the machine enabled a reinvention of the factory. With AI, a decoupling of the prediction from the judgment is going to enable reinvention of the organization.
Right.
And in particular, because the people who are good at doing the prediction and judgment together may not be the best at doing judgment when the machine provides prediction. We can see that in industry by industry. You can imagine it in healthcare. Right now, doctors are really good at diagnosis. And as part of that process, they also help the patient manage the stress of dealing with the healthcare system, dealing with difficult times. Maybe with the machine is providing the prediction on the diagnosis, you still want someone with 10 years of post-secondary training or more to help the patient manage the stress. But maybe you want a totally different kind of person. Maybe you want someone more like a social worker, right, and less like somebody who was at the top of their class all the way through. And that would lead to a reinvention of the industry and an entirely new kind of organization change. In human resources, we have a similar issue, which is right now, a lot of HR decisions are made on the ground by individuals who know the employees personally and have a sense of prediction and how they're going to do in the company and some judgment about what the company values.
Yeah.
what AI enables is it can enable the scaling of predicting who's going to succeed. Certainly in companies where they have hundreds or thousands of workers who are doing very similar jobs. But we still need someone at headquarters to provide the judgment about what success looks like.
Especially with bias, right? Because if AI would be biased based on history, only because it can only look at the past and what's happened, right? So you're right. I mean, there you need judgment to say, okay, well, maybe the prediction says this, but we really got to, give this person a chance.
Absolutely. If the leadership cares about reducing bias, I'm incredibly optimistic that AI will do better than whatever human processes people have in place. That's an important if. I get that. But if leadership cares about changing things, machine prediction allows them to audit, right, to figure out what's going wrong, and also to proactively learn. So one kind of system solution here that I've seen deployed in terms of HR is to say, like, there's a big company that decided to use AI to help them with their hiring processes. Okay. And they never deployed because the AI said, don't hire any women or minorities. They looked at it and like, why did the AI say don't hire women or minorities? And the answer is obvious. They hadn't hired very many women or underrepresented minorities in the past. And so the AI was just predicting based on that past data. But the manager in charge said, you know what, that's not right. And they dug into what was going on and they realized because it's not that the AI was predicting women and minorities would do badly. It was that the AI essentially was making predictions with very high variance because it had no idea because there was no data on which women or minorities might succeed in the company.
Right.
And so the strategy was when new applicants come along that have high potential, even if the best guess wasn't that good, but have high option value, that you should proactively hire those people, recognizing that on average they might not be as good. But in the process, we will learn which underrepresented people will thrive in the company. And they did that. They hired people who they were very uncertain about how they'd perform. They learned who would succeed. And then over time, they no longer needed to do that. And they had good estimates and their hiring practices became much, much more equitable.
That's a great example. It's funny because, we also saw it in digital marketing to some degree, this issue, right? Brand safety, which was a huge issue on platforms like YouTube, et cetera, ran into the same problem, right? Because the prediction models, which were just then buying advertising through programmatic, were basically sending people to websites and to watch videos that, brands weren't very comfortable with. I mean, obviously, training videos for Al-Qaeda, porn sites, a bunch of places where the prediction would say, oh, that's the best place to go, to get the most optimal and cheapest eyeballs and potential click-through rates, but obviously not good for the brand, morally not the right thing to do. And therefore, we need to insert a level of judgment so that a human could say, listen, even though that might be what the prediction model says, that's not the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look a little bit at this point and system solution idea and what the differences are and what value each of those brings to a company.
And so what I've seen most companies do is they look for these easy wins. They identify their existing workflow, they unpack it, and they can say, step by step, what does our workflow look like? They can find a task done by a human that is a prediction task. They take out that human, they drop it in AI, they keep the rest of the workflow the same. And since typically they've allocated that human to some other task, they've saved a little bit of money on that particular task. That, in some cases, is useful, but it typically isn't transformative. And so what I've seen is you do these easy wins and you save some money, but if that's somebody at the director level or below doing that kind of thing, they can't get anybody else to care. Okay. The CEO views it, hey, incrementally improving the workflows that you already have, that's your job. Great, Good for you. You did it. And no one pays attention. It doesn't lead to transformative change in the company. And it doesn't even lead to transformative change in the careers of the people implementing the point solutions. Where much more value can be unlocked, but it's much more risky. I don't want to hide that point, is when you can start thinking about how does this technology enable you to deliver a new kind of value. And we can figure out how technology enables you to deliver a new kind of value. That's when we can really see the upside potential. And the risk that so many established companies have is they say, you know what, we're good. We don't need to worry about it. And then a startup comes along and figures out that the value that a company, an established company, an incumbent might think they're delivering can be delivered much better in combination with prediction technology. And this is where we get disruption and the real risk that new technologies come about for incumbent firms.
It's interesting because you know Michael Cohen, which is how we met actually, who's our chief data and analytics officer, and he's building a platform, or we're building a platform with his leadership, which we call AIOS. That's the product name. We call it Project Catalyst, which is basically a platform, and it builds on what you talked about earlier for the digital and advertising community and industry, where we basically can use prediction to figure out what message, where, what target, what product, what geography, and how do you optimize a client's marketing spend in order to get the best return. It's super powerful, and because it's using generative AI, you can then also go to the next stage, which is then use it to also customize the actual content, and do it on a real-time basis. For us, it's causing us to also think about workflow. And because we're in an industry that has looked very similar, despite all the changes that you talked about earlier, for a long time. You still do a brief, and then from a brief, you do the content. And then from the content, you figure out what the media plan is going to look like, and then you execute it. Then you do research and figure out what worked and didn't work, and you go back, and that workflow is very similar. And we are having to think about, maybe we have to turn the entire workflow upside down. You actually start with what's in the marketplace now, first and foremost, in order to create the prediction, and then that then leads to a different set of and content development is now on a continuous basis, and you're not, it's not a batch process anymore across anything you do, including analog, et cetera. So it's just mind-boggling how much change could happen in our company, but also in our industry in the next few years, especially given how prevalent AI has been in digital advertising and in marketing for the last, 20 years, as you say.
Absolutely. I'm curious to hear what you guys have been up to and what that transformation's look like.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about Plus AIOS and how we at Plus Company plan to use it to optimize the consumer journey, plus some of the challenges we're facing and Avi's predictions for the near future. Welcome back to Partners in Possibility. I'm Brett Marchand. Plus AIOS is how Plus Company is exploring the ways prediction technology and generative AI can improve the way we market. We're at a point where we are now testing it. We're about to launch this new platform, so we're testing it with clients. You won't be surprised to hear that the predictive model is incredibly accurate. And we're doing a lot of work around customer journey instead of thinking sort of top down, where did you do your marketing and how did it impact your sales, et cetera, but actually doing it consumer by consumer. And to your earlier point, not only does that allow you to figure out how to optimize around consumer journey and use synthetic data to fill in the blanks about, what's the consumer journey look like, but also then to optimize the content in a way that's going to make it as effective as possible. And so I think this is where the power of AI and generative AI is incredibly interesting. But it may mean for us a pretty massive change in our workforce, because we're going to have to train them on how to use these. We're going to have to train people on how to use judgment, to your point, to make sure that we are not just letting the model drive all the decisions, because it could, it could lead to the wrong kinds of decisions. For us, we're using what we call a community of practice around AI instead of doing it centralized. And I don't know if this is the right approach or not, but I think it is, which is have a bunch of experiments that are working on each of these areas, working directly with clients at the agency level, at the grassroots level, seeing what works and doesn't work, figuring out, how do we have to change workflow and or our processes and our workforce. And we're starting to learn that it will have some major impacts on what the company looks like. And I think that, for me, that's acting more like a startup and less like a big company that's doing it top down. But I don't know if you have a point of view on whether you think that's the right approach or not.
It's very hard for a big company to do it top down without allowing some experimentation in different parts, right? So one of the big challenges of the between times is we don't know exactly what's going to work. We have some hypotheses and some ideas, and we kind of know what we're doing right now isn't going to work. But exactly what the better system is hard to discover. And so enabling your organization, your customers, your suppliers to experiment a little bit in order to help you learn and figure out what's best is clearly going to be better than you deciding, okay, this is definitely what the future should be, and just running with that.
Yeah, and you asked this really interesting question in your book, which is, if we knew then what we know today about AI, how would we behave differently? What would we change? What do you think that looks like for our industry?
There's an extraordinary potential for personalization, and to really help advertising do what it's supposed to, in the sense that helping people find the products that they want, and helping advertisers get in front of the people whose behavior will be changed because of the ad. A lot of our focus over the past few years has been, on the tech side, sure, and on the design side, but a little less on how do we think through what kinds of ads are going to not just get people to notice them, but lead to the change in behavior that helps the advertiser, while also helping the user consumer get what they want when they want. And exactly what the skills are, that's we're starting to figure that out. I don't think I would have known that 5 years ago, but this move toward personalization and the opportunities around it has been extraordinary.
If AI can help us influence the kinds of products that we buy that are aligned with our values and the things we think are important in the world, right? Who's making a difference in climate change? Who's actually treating people, in an equitable manner? Who's producing products that are going to be good for us as individuals, and as communities? I mean, there are a whole bunch of variables here that right now, as a consumer, you really don't have any sense of unless you dive in and do a ton of research. But that's actually something that could be incredibly beneficial, I think, with AI in the future, so that you're actually making purchases and voting with your dollars in a way that's actually going to make the world a better place. And I know that sounds, utopian, but I actually believe that that's one of the potentially beneficial impacts of AI on our industry, and therefore on companies and on the world.
Yeah, I love that vision. It's a really exciting future for the industry overall.
Avi, this has been fascinating. I could spend hours with you talking about this. I'll ask you one last question, which is one prediction for the future. One thing you think is that we're going to see 3 years from now, 5 years from now, because of AI and its power. What do you think that is?
I think AI is going to reduce discrimination and bias in a way that, in retrospect, will become obvious. And the resistance to it is going to increasingly come from the people who benefit from the biases in the current system. And so looking back 5 years from now, when we think through why didn't we adopt in this place versus that place, and who was fighting it, we'll realize that the people who fought hardest were not the people necessarily who cared about reducing bias, but they were the people who really benefited from the way the current system worked.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Jeffrey. I look forward to many conversations. Good luck with all your research. It'll be fascinating to hear where you go next.
Fantastic. Thanks for a great conversation.
Thank you for listening to Partners in Possibility. That was part 2 of my conversation with Avi Goldfarb. I hope you enjoyed our conversation on what AI and prediction technology means to the marketing field and the preview of our new intelligent all-in-one system for marketing, plus AIOS. Read the books Avi co-authored for even more insights into prediction technology and AI in the between times. We have links to them in the show notes.